can do that God does not know about? Matter of fact, my son, he thought, he was like, Dad, you could probably know just like God. I had him food. Had him food in his first year of college. Boy was going down to East Texas. He decided to go to Tyler. Well, you know, I'm from East Texas area. I'm from that area. So I said, son, let me tell you this right now, son. When you go down to East Texas, they know me down there. They know me, so they gonna know you. I said, when you running around down there in East Texas, and you try to go wherever you want to go, I'm telling you, son, they gonna spot you out and say, you tell them, boy. They gonna know you. He was going, no, Dad, he was just blowing me off. You don't know nothing, Dad. He pulled his pants up, walked around, he jumped, and then he got ready. We took him down to East Texas, going to Tyler Junior College. That's where we was going. He was in his car, you know, ride with his homies. He'd be riding around to all the little towns around there. He was in Nacogdoches, different towns. Now he'd stop at the Whataburger, and he'd get him something to eat. It'd be late at night, 2 o'clock in the morning. Then I called him up 2 days later. Hey, son, I heard you at Whataburger, 2 in the morning. He goes, Dad, how you know in the world? Dad, how you know I was at Whataburger at 2 in the morning? I said, boy, I told you I see everything. No, nothing get by. I hang up the phone. I'd hang up the phone. Call him back later, find out he at CVS at 1:30 somewhere. I call him up 2 days later. Hey, son, you at CVS in the morning. They told me they spotted you going across. And he was like, Dad, I can't go anywhere, Dad. I can't go anywhere without somebody knowing me because they know you. I was like, that's right. I told you that. Hung up the phone. I want him to think I knew everything he was doing. Now, I'm going to tell you my secret. He had an ATM card. Every time he started, I knew right away with that. One time I just looked at the bank account. I hadn't confused for 2 years. That boy was confused for 2 years going, Dad everywhere. but that's how the psalmist is. The psalmist knows you. Knows you. He knows where you are, he knows what you do, and he sees you at all times. That's what the psalmist said about God. He's saying that's how great God is, because he knows everything about you. And not only that, the psalmist says he even knows what you say. He goes on in the next verse, and he says, I know what they say. He says in verse number 5. Verse 4, even before there's a word on my tongue, before, oh Lord, you know it all. Before you even say anything, the psalmist already knows what you're going to say. You don't have to utter a word, and yet when you get ready to speak, God already knows. He already knows. I'll tell you about this lawyer. Case. Whatever. I think it was the prosecuting attorney. He called his client to the screen. That's a little old lady, Miss Jones. She comes up, sits down. He says to her, he says, Miss Jones. I use that because that's my wife. Miss Jones. Do you know me? She says, yes, I do. I know. And he turned around to the court and he was just smiling. She knows me. This little old lady knows me. He smiled. She said, yes, I do. She said, matter of fact, you're such a big disappointment. You lie, you steal, you cheat. That's what you do. You manipulate people. That's how come I know you. I know you. That's what she said. And he was looking all confused, like she done said all this about me. So he stood. He said, well, Miss, do you know the defense attorney, Mr. Bradley? Yeah. Do you know him? And she said, matter of fact, yes, I do. I've known him since he was a little boy. He's the same way. He's a liar. He's a cheat. He charged too much for everything. He does all these things. He drinks too much. Yeah, I know him too. Then the judge sitting up there. He rings the gavel up. He hit it down real hard. Silence in the court. He said, be quiet. Nobody said to speak. He called the two attorneys. Come here to me. And he said, look, I'll tell you right now. If either one of you, I'll throw you in jail. Either one of them. Ask if she know me. I'm telling you right now. Because he didn't know what was going to come out of her mouth. He didn't know what she was going to say. See, but the point is, the psalmist says, God already knows before you speak what you're going to say. Because he's omniscient. And he knows you. God knows all. There is nothing that God does not know. And look what he says in verse 6. He says, this knowledge, he said in verse 5, he says, because of this, you have enclosed me behind and before, and you got your hand upon me. This knowledge is way too wonderful for me. As a matter of fact, it's too high. The psalmist is saying, this knowledge about God, it blows my mind. I can't handle it. That's what he's telling you. He said, he knows it all, that he's able to do all these things, and that he knows what you say, what you're going to do, what you're doing. He's saying, it's unfathomable. I cannot grasp it. He's saying it's too much for him. That's what the psalmist is saying. Because he cannot wrap his head and his arms around this greatness of God. He's saying that's great. But look what he does, though. Look what he does in the next verse. Now he says, God is this great. He knows all of these wonderful things. But then he said he wanted to use another word. God is omnipresent. He is with you. The psalmist says, where can I go from your spirit? You know everything, God. So since you know everything about me, what I do, you know everything there is to know, then where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? God, no matter where I go, you're there. He said, no matter where I present myself, God, you're there. I can't go any place that you are not already there, God. He said, what you've done is you've shown yourself to be every place at every time. Little boy was going through the line at a church and he was going to get some apples. Note on it says, just take one. God's watching. What the note says. Little boy go through the line. He get to the end. There on me. He wrote a note himself. He said, take as many as you want. God looking at that. That's how we'll think that God is only looking one way, but God is everywhere at all times. God sees it all. There's nothing you can do that God does not see, because God is there. Look, this. The psalmist even says that God is so great. He says that even, what did he say? That death cannot even separate you from God. Look what he says in verse 8. If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. The psalmist said, if I go to heaven or if I go to hell, which was Sheol, he said, if I go either place, God, you're there. See, how can then, the question becomes, the psalmist already understood God to be in hell, then how can then God show himself and manifest himself in hell? I thought heaven and hell were separated. Maybe mess up your little mind there, because if they're separated, then that means the devil got his own little territory, so to speak, right? He's got his own thing, and he's running things down there because he's in hell, right? So obviously God wouldn't present himself in hell, right? God couldn't do that, right? But God, that's not what the psalmist understood. The psalmist understood him to be in hell. The psalmist understood God to be right there. How in the world could he be in hell and at the same time be in heaven? See, God is always there in three ways. One, to sustain. God is always in three ways. One, to sustain. Another way God is always present is that he's there to bless. And the third way he's there is to punish. There's three ways God has himself, and he will show himself to us. To sustain, to bless, and to punish. So the psalmist understood that. But then how in the world could he still then be in hell? I'll tell you what, I have a friend of mine, we went to a Maverick game. And one thing I like about this game, this particular friend, is he gets these tickets that are on the front row. I mean down there in those little seats where the sweat come off of you and hits it from the players. I like it. I got down there, boy, we walked down there, and then we had this little usher man come up to us. Tickets, please. He asked me for the tickets. I showed him my ticket. He said, this way. He walked me over there. I'm walking behind. Yeah. Hey, how y'all doing? I'm walking right. I get my seat. Right there on the front. Eye level with the players. Well, I was looking up, but they were there. They were there. You know, right there with the players. I thought, man, this is great. But I thought to myself, I don't like this. I don't like this. He said, we too close. I can't see them really. I'm, block my view. People stand up in the front of you. I can't see. Unless I was on the very front. Then I was like, I might like it a little bit. But don't get me wrong. I could get used to it now. I could get used to it if I was going there on a regular basis. I'd get used to it. I'd adapt or, improvise. I'd make it happen. But I was there, right? That's how he did. Now, you know what? The psalmist says we can't flee from God. That whether in this life or the next, that God is going to be there. He said death can't separate you. God shows himself in this life to bless and to punish. Guess what? In the next life, he's going to show himself the same way. Difference is, when you come up to God,